We got a vibe.
That's right.
Through the night.
Get you in that vibe.
Through the day, yeah.
This my station.
Mix 24/7 EDM.
Hey, Mix Nation. This is Alex Geis here with Jeff Montalvo, a.k.a. Seven Lions, before his next show on the Journey Tour. I want to thank Jeff for joining us here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Stoked.
Well, actually, I just caught you last week in between your Journey Tour. I caught you in Denver, Colorado at Halloween. And after the show, I was talking to people, and they could not stop talking about how great Seven Lions was. So you made a huge impact there. But
Cool.
Let's not dwell on the past. Let's talk about your future a little bit. Actually, just today, you tweeted November 9th, you have a new single coming out. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that and how it came to fruition, how it came to be?
Sure, yeah, it's a collab with Echoes. I've known them for a little while now, and we always talked about doing something. And we finally sat down and did it, and pretty stoked. It's definitely more of a mellow kind of track for me, but yeah, I'm pretty stoked on it.
Oh, so that's more of a mellow one. Actually, I'll segue from that. That's kind of similar to what I wanted to talk about, the song Coming Home off your latest EP, Creation. Was also, Coming Home was a more mellow vibe from you, kind of a break from your normal kind of bass-heavy music. How did that song come to be? And was that sort of a one-off dip into sort of that poppy vibe, or would you like to do more things like that?
Basically, that comes from the fact that whenever we're in the car, my wife is always listening to Of Monsters and Men and Mumford and Sons and things like that.
Okay.
So it's kind of influenced by that. And I'm not sure if I'm going to do anything else like that. Like, I kind of got all that acoustic stuff out of my system during the last EP, and I think I'm going to get back to kind of what I was doing before on the next one. Although this one with with Echoes does have kind of that indie vibe, but not as far in that direction.
Oh, very cool. So you want to return to more of your bass-heavy stuff, like what your tour is named after, The Journey. That song off of your latest EP, that one I can tell is really influenced by your metal love. I can really tell the hard rock elements, almost that gritty guitar sound, the arpeggioed acoustic guitar and that minor key just screams metal. And I know you're a big fan of that. Do you try to include that intentionally in your music a lot, or do you like to kind of separate your love of metal and your music production?
No, I think I definitely included it quite a bit. That song was definitely more obvious than usual, but I always do try and add some kind of homage in there, at least with more of the dubstep-y kind of stuff, just because with broken beats, it's really easy to do drum programming that has like metal influences. You know, with the four on the floor stuff, it's not really possible, but
right.
At least the dubstep stuff for sure.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have a ton of other interests outside of just electronic music. Not only metal, but a big sci-fi fan you seem to be, and fantasy fan. In fact, your name comes from a character from a Gene Wolfe novel, a famous science fiction writer. So how does this sort of sci-fi love and that fantasy, how does that lend itself to informing your music and how you approach songs?
Well, I think it generally has to do with me, I like escapism kind of fantasy novels and video games and stuff, so I like to make my music very metaphorical and not about day-to-day life, you know, like nothing about my music pegs it to a certain time, which is definitely on purpose. You know, it's not like songs about, you know, put your hands up or like,
more timeless,
driving in my like certain kind of car or whatever, you know, stuff like that. It's not about real life. It's all usually about something else.
Yeah, and your music is very atmospheric. It's very detailed. So where do you start usually in that process? Do you usually have kind of a rough soundscape idea and then a melody sort of pops out of that, or do you build everything off of a melody?
It always kind of depends. Sometimes I'll start with like a really ambient sound and like just start writing chords around it. Sometimes I'll know kind of the structure that I'm going for first, and then I'll just start fleshing the track out, and sometimes it'll be really simple, like just some piano chords. So it just depends.
Right. And as you're kind of writing these songs, I've heard you before say that you're kind of an overthinker, kind of a perfectionist at times. You're very meticulous with your production. So how do you balance that sort of perfectionist attitude with trying to be creative and just simply follow your muse and not overthink things?
I don't go back very often and redo a lot. I'll kind of finish something and I'll sit and decide if I like it, and then if I don't like it, then I'll just kind of scrap it.
Okay.
So, I don't know. I just, basically what I do is I'll work on something and I'll not listen to it for maybe a day, and I'll come back, and if I like it, then it's good to go, and then I don't touch it again, and I'm like down, you know. But if I don't like it,
so
then it's the time that helps. It's like taking time away from something to refresh, and then listening to it again is what really makes all the difference.
How much time does it usually take for you in between the sessions? You said just a day. Is that usually kind of how long it takes for your ears to reset and hear it for the first time?
Sometimes a day, sometimes less. So it really depends. Sometimes it could be like even just like 30 minutes is like going and doing something else and coming right back. It's just the taking a break, because if you spend too long without taking breaks, I think it's easy to just get caught up in a hole and like think that everything sounds good and not look at it critically.
Yeah, I think that leads people to either think everything's good or everything's horrible. This is the worst thing I've ever done after hearing it 1,000 times.
Yeah, definitely.
So your music is not only atmospheric, but it's very thematic. You said you love to invoke those fantasy themes and kind of otherworldly objects. So in terms of thematic music, one of your songs, Strangers, was actually on a movie soundtrack. Are you planning to do any more movie soundtrack things, or anything more along the soundtrack of video games or anything in that vein?
Yeah, I'd definitely like to. But that would be less of them like just getting a song from publishing and more of me trying to actually score movies and video games. I think that's definitely plans for the future. But right now, you know, I'm like way too involved with Seven Lions to really take the time off to do anything like
absolutely.
that.
But I understand.
It is a goal one day for sure.
If you did score something, what would you like to score? Would it be a video game or a specific genre of movie?
I think a sci-fi movie would be a lot of fun, or a sci-fi video game, but also I'm more of a fantasy nerd, so that would be great too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so your latest single, Rush Over Me, the one you just released, can you tell us more about how that came to be? How did that whole process work? Because there's a couple of collaborations on here, and also the singer. How was it all brought together?
That track, I actually did something with Kelly maybe 2 years ago. The song was called The End, and then at the same time we wrote Rush Over Me, and then I was working on that for a while. So it was like 2 years ago. Worked on it, decided I didn't like it, and then I put it away for a while, and then decided to like just redo it and start over completely. So I've been talking to Millennium and Said the Sky, and I figured they'd be really great people to work on it with me. So I sent it over to them, and then they kind of changed the melody a bit, sent it back, and then we just kind of went from there.
And how much did you retain from that original track? Just a few chords and a melody, or did you completely rehaul it?
It's pretty much completely different. Some of the sound effects and stuff are the same just because they're in the right key.
Right.
But other than that, it's completely different.
Well, yeah, it came out great. It definitely did. Well, I want to thank you so much. That's actually all the time we have for today. But once again, thank you, Seven Lions, for finding the time in your hectic schedule for us.
Yeah, no worries.
And be sure to catch the remaining 22 stops on his The Journey tour and grab his new single, Cold Skin, on November 9th. This has been Alex Geis. Thank you for tuning in, and stay up to date on the latest news, music, fashion, tickets, contests, and more. Your place for everything EDM is at Mix 24/7 EDM.